But anyway, I'm back in the saddle. I'm back to swimming my half mile 5 days a week and in the gym. And so I'm back to regular routine. So nothing to worry about here except the fact that we're living in a crumbling country. And you can see we have an old familiar face. He hasn't been on for a while. And we're going to have to correct that. We'll have to have him on more often. We're talking about Daniel out here, the Cosmic Cowboy, and has a really terrific show. We're going to have him tell you about that before we leave today. But Daniel is really kicking butt and taking names. And in fact, we were just sharing trade secrets here, and he gave me a good tip. I'm going to have to think about trying this. And it's a way to outfox YouTube. Anytime we can do that, that's a good thing. But we're going to start out by talking about a number of issues today. And one of the issues we'd never get away with talking about on YouTube, and that's that little thing they're trying to stick in our arm. And I'll say this, they may have done away with the mask mandates, which is a related factor. Mm-hmm. But ladies and gentlemen, it's been announced that Biden's administration is holding an international conference on how to get everybody vaccinated. So this is not going to go away. They don't care about the Supreme Court. They're going to get you jabbed to 100% level and then have you come back every month or every other month and continue to get jabbed. So Daniel's going to start out by talking about his ideas on the vaccine. So Daniel, welcome to the show. And I think this is a needed show because the Biden administration is not backing off.
No, Dave, they're not. And thanks for having me on your program there. Awesome program that it is. I believe they're already challenging, the Department of Justice is already challenging the mask court ruling right now, so it's not going to last. And I know there's videos out there where people were on planes when the pilots announced that they was struck down, and you can see them cheering. Nobody wants these face diapers anymore. The days of face diapers are over, but yet the powers that be, the Mystery Babylon people there, are still having their way. They're not going to have it, and they're going to make sure that everybody obeys their edicts. But I want to tell you something, Dave. You may have already found this out. Now, the jab that people have gotten obviously come from a Wuhan lab, and then just take that for a second. The bioweapon, just take that over here and compartmentalize it for a second. Then on the other side, we have this massive Ukraine-Russia type war brewing there. It's the same people that told us that the virus, the shot was great and this and that, and masks are good, and keeping your kids out of school is good, and losing your job is good, are the same people that's ordering us to not say anything about Ukraine, but put all blame squarely on Putin for everything. So you have the shot and how they rolled that out and how they made everybody obey. And criminalize, really, as you can see, criminalizing free speech about if you have a different opinion as to where it came from or the effectiveness of the so-called vaccine, which it's really not, are the same people telling. So the entire system is telling us to hate Putin. Putin's the cause of your inflation. He's the cause of your high prices. He's the cause of everything. What a great! It's the same people. So see, I haven't fallen for that. Russia is evil type situation yet. In fact, as you know, they found all these bioweapons lab in Ukraine. Well, here's the interesting thing that I wanted to get to about that, because I want to put up the shot and how that came and the virus, how that came with Russia. 2017, Putin was at a meeting, I believe it was in Parliament, and he said that the United States military was going around Russia collecting DNA, RNA samples of people in his country. And he said the purpose for that was that the United States was getting ready to create a bioweapon. The Air Force had contracted out the acquisition of DNA samples throughout Russia. Now, they only wanted Caucasian. Now, this is from the Air Force Times. Back in 2017, you can Google it. They only wanted Caucasian RNA and DNA. And they specifically said, we do not want Ukraine DNA. Now think about that for a second. 2017, and of course everybody said Putin was crazy, and then they started mocking him with memes back in the day. But isn't it interesting how that we were collecting, our military was collecting it and obviously now here we are with a bioweapon, and it seems that this bioweapon, Dave, is targeted for specific groups and it affects specific groups. But I thought that was just dumbfounding when I found that out, that our own military was over there. And that's why I don't like this 23andMe and all this Ancestry.com. Somebody's collecting samples. Somebody's building a database. They're looking for something, and I would posit that it goes all the way back to the days of Noah, and then we'll go fast forward to Matthew, in Matthew, where it says, such as the days of Noah, so shall it be when the Son of Man comes. Well, what were they doing in there? They were changing the DNA back in the days of Noah, and Noah was found perfect. That means his DNA had not been changed or altered. And then this final point here, Dave, and then it goes back to Daniel when he's talking about the giant there with the DNA, the miry clay and the iron.
Yes.
Isn't it interesting that it says that the iron and the clay would not cleave one to another? I think the specific says, whereas thou sawest iron mixed with clay, they shall mingle themselves with the seed of men. The seed, of course, is the children of men. Something is being mixed with the DNA of men. Is exactly what happened in the days of Noah. They were trying to get to the DNA, to the lineage of Christ, because they saw that had Christ been born, their kingdom would be ruined. And here they are again. So this mingling of these shots, these bioweapons with our DNA is changing us structurally from humans to a hybrid.
I could not agree with you more. I wasn't really prepared to go here with this. This is fascinating. And I've been having these kinds of discussions. I haven't yet done a show on it. Congratulations, you're the first to take the vaccine back to really what I would call Genesis 6. This is why I've got my notes out here. You're making me take notes, Daniel. You're making me work too hard here. But this is fascinating because this is fallen angels type of stuff you're talking about here. The flood was supposed to purify that, but maybe it did, maybe it didn't. We know that we can resurrect old viruses. Maybe we're resurrecting old DNA, from the giants, the Nephilim, or wherever. That's fascinating. But let me tell you what I have published in the past that parallels what you're saying. And this is where you really got my attention. The defense minister from China in 2017 issued a speech that got leaked. And the late Paul Martin, God rest his soul, and John, name just jumped out of my head, and myself and a couple of other people, we received transcripted notes of this speech that Wei Fang, the defense minister, made to the CCP's leadership committee. And it was an extremely long speech, and I wrote a 5-part series on it. And the bottom line is this. He said a lot of things, but the bottom line was this. We are going to create we have created a race-specific bioweapon. Israel helped us, although they didn't know who they were creating it for. They just gave us the technology. And they said, this is for Americans. We won't touch the 14 million Chinese that are living in America, but we have to occupy America. We're not interested in joint occupancy, and we are going to basically wipe out the population that's there, minus the Chinese, for their resources that we need to survive. And America is the only landmass that can support our growing population needs. And this was in 2017, paralleling what you're saying here, that the Air Force was out to do with Russia. But you are opening so many avenues, Daniel. Let me just give you one more thought. In 2014, I came across information, and this was in the aftermath of the kick out of the puppet Russian government with snipers on the roof and all this and that. And I had Devin Archer and Hunter Biden transferring at 2 different times on Air Force Two biological shipments of an unknown origin. And I speculated without having detail. I said, this could be a bioweapon. I was guessing. Ended up, it was probably coronavirus. And the second one, I think we'll find out in the future. But this was transported to the Wuhan lab from Ukraine. And Burisma was the central agent. I believe this will come out when Hunter Biden's laptop is fully made public. And it was the same strategy, I think, as what you're talking about here. That would be my guess. And also, if you remember, I had high hopes that when Trump came into office, Putin was already disassociating himself from the globalists. He had quit the SWIFT money system, or was in the process of doing that. He was creating his own Russian internet. Mm-hmm. So he was withdrawing from the Klaus Schwab World Economic Forum sphere of influence that he had once been a part of. Now they scrubbed his membership. And I hoped that Trump and Putin would join together to battle the forces of the New World Order. But then the Russian collusion delusion came along and kept them apart. And I think that was the purpose for it. So this is what you triggered in me when you said what you just said. Are we on the same path here with our thinking?
Oh, absolutely. You notice when I mentioned Daniel and the statue, the mixing miry clay with iron. Yes. Think about that for a second, Dave. We are made from dust. Dust thou art, dust shall thou return. Of course, ground is about 30% clay to begin with, but then you have the iron. And for some people, they claim that they've been magnetized after they've gotten the shot.
Yes.
So there's your iron, the iron trying to mix with the miry clay. You know, Jesus came to save mankind. He came as a man. He didn't come as a God entity. He came as man, being God, but he came as man so that his DNA was the same, and he would recognize his children that would have his DNA, the original intent and design of God the Father. Jesus came back as that. So he recognizes the DNA in his children. When that DNA is going to be changed, he won't recognize that person. So I would say, and I'm not saying people are going to lose their salvation at all, not by any means. I'm saying it's something to think about. It's something to look at. Are there clues? Are there types and shadows? It appears there are types and shadows. You know, God destroyed the earth because that mingling of the seed, that is the changing of the DNA from the Nephilim into the daughters of men, creating giants and hybrids in the land. And he had to destroy them with that world with water. And he said he wouldn't do it again. But when it said, such as the days of Noah, so shall it be when Son of Man comes. Well, the second destruction is from fire. God is going to have to come back down and do it again because the DNA is being changed again.
My goodness gracious. I didn't think of it in regard to succession, but it makes sense. Let me share with you about an old friend of mine. He's been on this show a number of times. In 1993, I listened to Art Bell for the very first time. I didn't know who he was at the time. And he had on a guy named Vance Davis, who was a former NSA attached to NATO. And Vance is telling the story about the secret space program and this and that. My dad was involved in reverse engineering German physics from the Nazi scientists, and he knew there was a secret space program. I couldn't talk about it. He told me about it for his death, but if I would have said anything while my mom was still alive, she would have forfeited all her assets because it was derived from his two pensions, one from being naval intelligence and then working in the intelligence community after he retired. And so I had to be really careful. I could never do anything public until my mom passed away. I'm hearing Vance talk, and I hadn't heard this kind of talking about the space program, secret space program, as back 8 years before, prior to my dad dying. So I reached out to him. We ended up becoming very good friends. We still are today. Now, this is 29 years ago. The very first time I met Vance, he said to me, well, when I was in my NATO training with the NSA, he said they taught us that there was a war in the cosmos. This is Genesis 6 perfectly, without calling it Genesis 6. The bad guys, as we would call them, lost, and they were cast to earth. Mm-hmm. We were taught they wanted to steal the soul of mankind to get back at God, but they could not crack the code, so to speak. Mm-hmm. So they decided to change human beings, which is transhumanism. This is 1993, Daniel, before transhumanism was even a term. He didn't use the term, but he described the process perfectly. And then he started talking about the intermingling of the DNA. The reason I'm telling you this, what you're saying here was part of NSA training with NATO back in 1989 is when he heard this.
Wow. You know, it all sort of ties together. You know, when Daniel was told to seal up the things in the book till the time of the end, I think that book is being opened, and we're able now to understand things. Let me ask you something, Dave.
I agree.
Are you aware of the snake venom controversy regarding the shot?
I am, and I interview Celeste Solomon a lot, a former FEMA official. She sat in a lot of these kinds of meetings.
Mm-hmm.
And I just interviewed Celeste yesterday, and she told me, she said, Dave, this is real. I was undecided until I talked to Celeste. I really didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
And I could not sit down here and quote to you chapter and verse until I break down my interview with Celeste. But I will tell you that everything she has said has come to pass.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's probably something to it. What do you think?
Well, anytime you have major blockbuster revelations like that, you gotta take a step back, and you gotta not just jump on it. And sort of like when I said earlier in the beginning here, that immediately the entire system, the media, religious organizations, government, media, everyone's telling us Russia evil, Putin evil, Ukraine great. Even though there was a coup they got that government by coup, and the guy was a gay dancer in videos who's leading the country of Ukraine, and they got bioweapons labs, and Hunter Biden and Joe Biden, the big guys all over this, making money from them. But the whole system is telling us the same thing, and so I hesitate just a little bit to make sure that I don't fall down the Putin bad, and I didn't on Putin, because when the system is telling you one thing, so now I'm watching to see if the system, how it rises up to say, if you say anything about snake venom, you're a kook. You conspiracy theorist. I'm going to see if the whole system is going to collapse like they always do around that. If it's a threat, they will. If it's not a threat to the truth, then they won't. It appears like they're just now beginning. The memes are coming out. The talking heads are now coming out. The fact checkers are coming out. Always look for that. Yeah. And notice how the fact checkers always prove the Democrats are correct, strangely enough. So, but I am leaning toward there's something to that. It goes right back to the Garden of Eden when the snake told Eve, one of the first lies, thou shalt not surely die. What do they tell you if you get the shot? You won't die. It is written, there are headlines where it says, take the shot so you don't die. Or if you don't take the shot, you want people to die. The same lie is coming out. And we, of course, know lots of people have died. It's the same lie from the same snake. So if you take the snake and you put the venom in there, of course, we know the father of lies is the one that is creating these bioweapons to subdue mankind. And let me tell you this, Dave, this is important. Satan said, the desire of his heart is to sit in the temple of God, showing that he is God.
Yeah.
Where is the temple?
Well, are we talking about Jerusalem?
No. The church is the temple.
Oh, okay. I understand what you're saying.
The church is, your body is the temple of God. He wants to sit in the temple of God, showing that he is God, showing that it is his creation, because he can make man better than the creator can. So he wants to be in our temple to supplant the one who sits there now. And we can only do that by choice. He can't come in and take that. But you could give that up. So that for the snake, Satan, the shot, it's rolling in together.
It certainly is. This goes right back to what Vance told me and how it paralleled Genesis 6. Vance was not, I wouldn't call him a biblical scholar at the time. I mean, he had awareness, believes in God and Jesus now, but we didn't talk about Genesis 6 specifically until I brought it up. And he said, yeah, that's pretty much it. He said they couldn't get the soul, but they wanted to change mankind. And he said we were to be on the lookout for this. NATO was opposed to this. In fact, he was attached to the senior non-com of NATO, Master Sergeant Bob Dean, who I've met and got to know because of Vance before Bob passed. And Bob was chasing alien entities. And I want to get your feeling on this. He had cataloged through his role in NATO. Now, he had the power of a general. This Bob Dean guy, the senior non-com in NATO, he had the power of a general. and he was in charge of a lot of different things. And one of them was alien investigations, ET investigations. And he said he cataloged over 24 of them. And he and I advanced did a private briefing for some, well, let's just say dignitaries, where we had to keep our information secret, but we were sharing information, if that makes any sense. We met in the back of a hair salon in Mesa, Arizona, in total secret. There were astronauts, astrophysicists there. It was really interesting. And Bob talked about this. I came to believe this, and I wanted to get your feeling on this. These alien entities, I think, are part of the Great Deception, where I think Satan's fallen angels are imitating aliens to deceive us down the road. Do you have any feelings on that?
Well, yeah, I think the alien deception is part of the plan. As to how big that is, I don't know. It seems like the world could coalesce behind, as you know, Reagan said, an alien invasion will cause us all to join a one world government to fight these entities here. But you know, with the release of the Tic Tac videos, basically that's soft disclosure right there. So we have to admit that they are here, and I think they're among us. I've heard people say on my show as much as a third of the human population may be contaminated or hybrids of them. I mean, I wouldn't go that far, but I would say certainly there are certainly some. I think some of these are manifested when you see their eyes turn black. I think that's an indicator right there. As alien species, though, there's somebody driving those crafts. And if you look at ancient artwork, you always see UFOs. You can go back to hieroglyphs, wherever, as far back as you go, you see UFOs. So who's driving them and what their agenda is? It only seems to me that it's in league with, I would say this, that maybe perhaps this shot could be to turn us more acceptable for them, as some have speculated. I think it was Mike Adams saying that they want to actually cool the planet and darken it so that they can come down here and enjoy a great life here on planet Earth. I saw that at one Gen 6 conferences. I think you were there. Remember that? And so, yeah, I think the aliens are involved here. I'm really not going to put them in the supernatural category. I think because there are such a wide variation of spiritual beings, physical beings from other dimensions. I'm going to put that out there too. Yeah, we live in a much bigger universe than we're ever told about, and we had to find these things out on our own. But I think aliens are part of that. They're physical, actual beings, and they're evil as hell. They might be part of the lineage of the Nephilim. They may even be them, but no, they're a part of it. And I think we're going to see some actual interaction between our governments and them. I would say in the not near future.
We already have, but it's behind the scenes. Let me share with you what's subjective and then what some people have confirmed for me. I've had this very discussion that you and I are having publicly, and I'll tell you, this is going to go down as one of our landmark interviews, I believe. But behind the scenes, I have had discussions with Derek Gilbert. I've touched on this a little bit with Tim Alberino on a recent interview I did with him on the radio side. And I think you're right on the money with what you're saying here. Here's my subjective reaction. When I see like Jacinda from New Zealand, the Prime Minister, and I see all these world leaders, Justin Trudeau fits this, Macron from France, Angela Merkel fit this perfectly. When they speak, and Daniel, I'm a guy that taught research and stat at a university level, so I'm very, very enshrined in the scientific process. And what I'm going to tell you is not scientific; it's subjective and from the heart. But I think we're kind of proving the case from the back door in. And here's what I mean: when I hear all these world leaders talk, Tulsi Gabbard among them, they all go back to the World Economic Forum. And I can trace, when I look at them, I see this evil in their eyes. You mentioned black eyes. I see their evil in their eyes. They're without empathy. They don't represent their people whatsoever. That's the universal quality, is their people be damned. We're serving an agenda. And for the first time, I think most of our world leaders, at least on those that are embracing world economic policies, and there's a split in the world on this now, but I think for the first time, we saw a lot of humanity be united with leadership, and we've never seen that before. And I think it's part of this satanic connection, that these people are indeed of a different bloodline. That would be my hypothesis to investigate. And I certainly see it in their lack of empathy. They're look at Trudeau, outright evil. I mean, I don't like your protests, so I'll steal your bank account. I see the same thing from Susan Rice, Obama, Michelle Obama. I see the same. When I look at these people, I just get this feeling of projection of evil. And I think it's related to the bloodline wars. And I think what's going on in Ukraine is largely a bloodline war between what we're talking about here. Have you come to believe that too?
Oh yeah, yeah. It goes back through families, and I think it's interesting. You know, in the book of Genesis and a lot of places in the Old Testament, it lists the genealogies. And you think, well, why do they list that genealogy? Well, they list that genealogy so you can go back and trace who the people were that didn't get their DNA contaminated, and the powers that be, they have a similar type of list where, you know, this duke came from this duke and this, so they can trace their bloodline, you know, simultaneously to keep their lineage, so they would know who's in their lineage and give them appropriate, actually exclude them. I would say exclude them from the effects of the shot, and then include those who don't have their lineage. So I think they can discern people by their DNA structure. They're looking for people from that. You could Google or DuckDuckGo, whatever you use, black eyes of the leaders, and you'll find everyone had a black eye. John Kerry's had a black eye. George Bush had a black eye. Madonna had a black eye. The Pope had a black eye. What's going on here? This obviously there's initiation. Remember that coin they gave Mike Pence when he turned on in the government when they were counting the votes and such. They gave him a coin after he declared that he's not going to send it back to the states. What was on that gold coin? Is he now in the initiation? Is he now in the club? Because I think coins is another thing that they do. So yeah, no.
He was always in the club, in my opinion. He has a long history of, shall we say, exploiting children, particularly young boys. I don't know how much you know about this, but it's something that surfaced when I was looking into his background in the campaign of 2016. I said, I wonder if Trump has found out what I have found out. The guy's a pedophile. And to me, he's always been in their sphere of influence. There is division, though, within the New World Order, kind of another topic for another time. I interviewed Doug Thornton, former DHS agent, and we were talking about the New World Order versus the old New World Order, and they're conflicting. I'll tell you another way this is manifesting in Ukraine, too. I know for a fact, 100% verifiable with the source, that AMLO from Mexico and Bolsonaro from Brazil, a week before the Ukraine invasion, sent a contingent to meet with Putin. And the subject was precious metals backed currency, because Mexico is going to be the world leader in silver by 2030. And Brazil is in that kind of realm with gold. And they did not want to have digital currency, which is being backed by, I think, the sons of the Nephilim. And I think this is some of what's going on in Ukraine right now. All of Latin America is going to line up with Russian gold on the ruble. They don't necessarily like Putin. They fear him. They see him as being brutal. But all Latin America, some of Africa, China's on the fence right now. They keep vacillating. India is moving in the direction of Russia. They don't want this digital ID, which I think is the precursor of the mark of the beast. I don't know if that's their reason for rejecting it, but they want the freedom that comes with mercantilism and a gold-backed currency. Has any of your research gotten into this kind of division between what kind of money system are we going to be in?
No. I have been watching that, though. There is obviously a struggle behind the scenes, isn't it? Isn't it interesting? Putin, I think when he first got into power a few years ago, he spent $500 million rebuilding churches.
Yes, absolutely.
And in our country, we're shutting them down and closing them and locking up the preachers and dictating. You know, there are some churches out here in America, Dave, that have shot vaccine shot stations there They have no clue about the book of Daniel or the book of Genesis or Matthew, what it says about the end times and about specifically Genesis 6. They don't teach that. So they wouldn't have that in their order. You know, when the Bible says that if it were possible, the very elect would be deceived. Well, you got to read on. That somebody said, "Well, church can't be deceived." Oh, yes, it can, because it says you have to watch your own faith lest you fall. You can be deceived, and so we have to guard ourselves. And the best way to do that is study the Bible and just believe it word for word, because it is actually telling the future. But I got a little rabbit hole for you, Dave. I did a ranting point on this here on my program. You notice how that it seems, and I'm not a Trump worshiper. I'm just saying he's a man in time of the seasons, and God used him in many ways. Yes. So let's just, I'm not going to apologize for that. He did. He fixed our border, lowest gas prices. I mean, we can go on with that. But there's a peculiar thing that he did. How many times, if you ever watched his rallies, the one thing that was consistent was he always read this poem called The Snake. Now, isn't it interesting? If Trump was writing everything, he said, I was wiretapped in the beginning, and they said, no, you weren't. He said, I didn't commit rash conclusion. No, he didn't. I mean, just you name everything that he said, and it's been true. He predicted $5-7 a gallon gas. There it is. But he kept reading the snake. I said, why does he keep reading that snake? And I know he was intending for immigration, but I did a ranting point on that day. There is a type and shadow in there that the snake could actually, just a type and shadow. I'm not saying it is. I'm not making that definitive statement. But the snake and the woman is about what that poem is about. Well, the snake, of course, is Satan. And in the Bible, the woman is the church. Yeah. And this woman takes the snake in. And it's interesting. The wording in that it's shocking. It's like a Bible framework right there. It starts off saying that she's walking down a path, because Psalm 23, he leads me to the path of righteousness beside still waters. Second verse, the woman's walking next to a lake. Then it says the frozen snake. She takes in the frozen snake. Dig this. What do you have to do with the vaccine? You have to freeze it. And then she wraps them in silk. Where's silk come from? China. I mean, it's crazy. And you just go down through there. And then, of course, eventually the snake bites her. And she said, why did you bite me? And the snake said, well, you knew damn well that I was going to bite you. And the woman said, well, now I'm going to die. Well, here we go. People talking about snake venom. People talking about changing the DNA. And now, if you take it, a lot of people have died. I'm just saying, how about that for a rabbit hole?
That's quite the rabbit hole. It's a brilliant tie-in with known history. This is fantastic. Well, why do you think Trump went along with the vaccine? Oh, now that for me, that's an easy one. He's the leader of the free world. He wanted that. He did. It's like when he went in office. He knew there's a swamp. He knew there's some bad players. You got Pencil Nick. You got Pelosi. You've got all these freak shows coming in there, Omar and AOC. He knew there was some swamp there, but he vastly miscalculated, maybe from the people around him, thinking that it wasn't as bad or as deep as it was. So when he goes in, and that was a drawback. Trump missed that. He did not know, and who could know that it was so deeply entrenched in every single layer of government. He thought there was at least enough good guys there that there was a fringe element that he had to get rid of, and that wasn't the case at all. It's vice versa. There's just a fringe of good guys, and the vast majority are corrupt. But when you get to the shot, he thought that he was doing the right thing because his people around him was telling him, "We got to get hold of this." And like everything he touched, if he went after energy independence, got it done. Went for the wall. Had to fight, but he got most of it done. I mean, you think about he's had to fight for everything, and so when the disease came up, the pandemic came up, he wanted to attack it and win and take the victory over that. And in his mind, he couldn't compute, like at the beginning of entering into office, that so much of the CDC and the National Institutes of Health and the Fauciism and that freak woman with the scarf thing going on there did not know that they had an agenda that was so evil, even the normal mind cannot comprehend the depth of evil. You cannot comprehend the damage that humans, particularly in authority, pharmaceutical companies, how in the heck could you associate them killing people with what they do, their mission of helping people?
You can't. The mind can't do that. So his mind did not go there, and that's why he got the thing out that he did. I think he's had some regrets now. I think he knows more than he ever knew by now. He's been saying it's got to be a choice. So he's pulling back a little as much as he can, because as soon as he says that it's anything negative about it, the system will collapse on him even harder than what they already have. So he knows that. He's not giving them that. And so he can only do something about it if he gets back into power, and he's not getting back into power if he says the shot's killing people. They will not happen. He knows that. He's got to play the game. He's always played ahead of them. They play checkers. He plays chess. It looks like that he's an imbecile, that he didn't know what he was doing, that he's trying to kill it, and it's not the case at all.
But if he was I want to say this in the correct spirit, because I'm not trying to be accusatory. But had Donald Trump been a man of the Bible and a biblical scholar to any degree, he would have known the role that pharmakia plays as we approach the end days. That's very clearly talked about when you have the first attempt at world government. This is what we're in right now, the new Babylon phase, I believe, and that will bleed into the new world order in terms of the end days and mark of the beast. And of course, Jesus comes back and there's your third kingdom. But if he was more of a biblical scholar, he would have seen through this right away. But also, I really believe had he exposed this, he would have ended up like JFK.
Mm-hmm. And I got a quick reply on that one there, just bouncing back and forth here, iron sharpening iron. Our own church are supposed to be biblical scholars. They're supposed to be the watchmen on the wall. If as Trump, a layman, supposed to know more than the biblical scholars has been having church for the last since 1699 in this country, could he come in and know more than them? Our own church doesn't know that, and that's why you can get vaccinated in our church. And I bet the number of people vaxxed in the church probably mirrors this population as a whole.
I don't know that to be true, but I would agree.
I'm not saying it is true. I'm just suggesting it could be true.
You're raising an excellent point, Daniel. This is an excellent point. Well, here's the thing I've had with the church, and I'll give you an example. I'm in and out of this one church, and I do it for perfunctory community of God, but I don't go regularly, not since this happened. An assistant pastor got up, and it was about a year ago, and he said, the leader may not be a godly man, but he's God's man, and it's your duty to follow what he says. Mm-hmm. And I'm going, okay, I agree with that. That's Romans 13. But what if he conflicts with the Bible? Whose authority is higher? Is it the Ten Commandments, or is it this illegitimate government you're defending? And I'm thinking, he didn't say that. And he's telling people to follow evil. It's okay to follow evil, and he's misapplying the Bible. And it's not just that instance. Most of your churches today, and I ask this question rhetorically of a lot of my readers when I write columns, when's the last time your pastor ever organized a protest against abortion or even said anything against abortion in the pulpit? When's the last time your pastor confronted evil in any form that had any remote association with the government? And I said, the reason they don't is because they want the 501c3 tax exemption, and they know they'll lose it if they start preaching real world events. Mm-hmm. But my position is, what good is it to go to church and have scripture thrown at you, but not have it applied to your life today in a meaningful way? Mm-hmm. And this is where our churches are tremendously compromised.
Well, I agree with you 100% there. I don't see them down protesting at the local library when the drag queens come in there and start twerking in front of 3-year-olds, or in the public schools telling your little kids. Dave, I think I read this the other day, that a school classroom teacher in Texas, I think maybe 5th grade, claims that 20 of her 32 kids come out transgender. Well, I did see that. Yes. Well, they came out that way because they were taught that. We gave them permission to go in there and teach them. And there are a lot of Christians in this country still. But I agree with you. They want an easy life. They don't want to be out in the forefront. They want to sing some hymns, and I'm not mocking them. I mean, Christ loved the church and died for the church. You got to be careful about the broad swaths of blame, but they also have to go to them and say, hey, brothers, there's something ain't right here. Okay, we're on the precipice of World War III, or so we're told. And this thing could be what's going on with this vax could be exactly what lines up with the Bible, and you're not studying it. You're not even taking it into account. And the Bible says, "Be ready to answer every man." Well, what's the answer? Answer is not just to say the government told me to take a shot, so I'm taking a shot. When it comes to obeying man or obeying God, I think we know what the answer to that is.
Yeah, I do know what the answer to that is, and this is where the pulpit as a whole is failing the Christian contingency. We also said something too about Putin, and I agree a lot with what you said about him reviving the churches, but also too, Daniel. I got to tell you, I'm not in line with a Putin all bad, Ukraine all good. I know that's all nonsense. But I will also tell you this, that Putin is not a pure blood to be followed. Mm-hmm. He's ex-KGB, blended into Russian mafia, now is the leader. He kills opposition media. He kills opposition political opponents. That's a long history that follows him. That part's verifiable. Putin still scares the hell out of me. I don't trust him in any way, shape, or form. Right. But I'm also not. By the way, I don't know if you got this email. I got an email from Google. And Google said you cannot talk about Putin, and it's all Putin.
I saw that.
It's all Putin's fault.
I saw that.
Did you get that email too?
Mm-hmm. Yes, I did see that. I was going to bring that up.
Yeah, but I'm not buying it because
I'm not buying it.
Listen, the Allies committed war crimes in Dresden by firebombing a civilian population knowingly towards the end of World War II, and it was the British Air Force mostly, but some with our help as well. We killed 100,000 German civilians, and we knew what we were doing. When you look at war crimes are always part of war. There is no rule when it comes to war about how to conduct yourself.
Well, if you look
at the losers go on trial when it's all over.
Well, look at the VAERS website of deaths caused by vaccines and measure it against how many Ukrainians were killed. Who's killed more people? I agree. I agree. There are equal opportunity killers out there, and our government, locking people up since January 6th, like worse than Guantanamo Bay, Guantanamo and the prison, been kept there without charges, in dungeons, been spit on, and all kinds of weird stuff happening to them. That doesn't sound like the allowing of the invasion of our southern borders. There's in the millions that have come across that border. They're getting ready to eliminate, as you know, Title 42, and they're telling the border guards down there, be ready because you're not going to be ready for what's coming. So and once that and in that contention of people, there's going to be a crime wave, and so if you allow somebody to come in and commit crimes and commit murder, are you an associate? Are you a partaker in that? I would believe so.
I have argued these are the grounds for impeachment, because Biden is willfully neglecting his responsibility to the law, and that's an impeachable offense. And now his actions are leading to ancillary crimes that are not beyond his knowledge, so he has to be an accomplice after the fact if you were to go into a court of law. But here's another issue, and we're kind of on a different path when I say this, but it's true. Listen, I'm calling for the unelection of every Republican incumbent in the primary, because they could have stopped this in Congress if they wanted to. Nothing passes. Nothing's moving. No money. Total delays on everything you do. They could have stretched Kamanji, Jackson Brown, the guardian of the gate of pedophiles. They could have stretched that out forever and a day, just like what happened under Obama when he tried to appoint Merrick Garland. They didn't do any of this. None of these Republicans deserve to stay in office. And so I say unelect every one of them in the primary. What do you got to lose? They've already shown you they don't care about you.
No.
And then unelect all Democrats in the general election. But then again, too, Daniel, I don't know if you know how much I got into the election fraud here in Arizona. And I'm going to say this immodestly because I'm proud of the work I did. If you want to know what really happened to steal an election in Arizona, which was the model for the rest of the country, Liz Harris and my work are the two places that you would go. And I have 5 provable tenets how this happened. But here's what I discovered to our conversation. This is incredible, Daniel. This is what I discovered all the way down to the county clerk and recorder in almost every county in Arizona, down to the county health official, down to, I mean, the smallest of counties to the largest of counties, our Secretary of State, our governor, our Maricopa County Sheriff, who would have to enact search warrants or arrest warrants if we were to really act on what we know, the County Board of Supervisors of Maricopa County and Pima County, totally corrupt, withholding evidence from the investigation of election fraud in violation of court orders. Every one of these people and more, a cast of thousands, this is how far the penetration went. They're all controlled by either George Soros, China, or both. And it's provable. It's not like, gee, I think this is where the rabbit hole leads. I'll give you one example. Doug Ducey said in a speech to the National Governors Association, so you can't take this back, this is public. He said, oh, we love doing business with China. We're selling them rare earth minerals they need for their military. And in 2017, when he said that, China, with official capacity, said in 4 instances, we will nuke you if you do this. And we're selling them military grade uranium, other precious metals. We have been totally betrayed down to the grassroots of our.
How is it Zuckerberg gets to interfere with our elections to the tune of $500 million? How does he get to interfere with our elections? And let me tell you, here's a little thing that a lot of people have on their minds, Dave. Kind of another little ditty, but the empty. You know how that we have empty store shelves. Well, we know, you and I both know, that everyone should have food insurance. That is, you should have your own personal stores for insurance, just like you have car insurance. You know that. But the system is built for 3 days. Everybody says you have 3 days in the stores. The reason is everything is calibrated by computers to replenish at specific times for demographics, for the populations, and it's sort of, it gels, it moves a little bit depending on as population goes up. What's happened is, we've added about 10 million people to the population. We are feeding 10 million more people, and that's why there are empty shelves. The system has not got up to that level yet. I'm just throwing that out there as a weird aside.
No, listen, I totally agree with you. But I want to go back to, and I'm not going down the election fraud angle in this discussion, but I just want to say this. What I learned from my work, I'm really glad I did the work. I mean, I immersed myself in this for about 9 months, and I'm glad I did the work. But beyond the election fraud, what I found was the penetration into our local government was way beyond whatever I thought I would find. But here's the biggest message. The people that are conforming at the county clerk and recording level, they're getting inducements, campaign donations from Soros and things like that. So they live for Friday. They're not in this long-range goal. But I can tell you, many of the governors, Secretary of States, state attorney generals, they know exactly who they're serving. They know this is Satan. They know this is the bloodline war.
This is why I've mentioned that this goes the illegal immigration, the flooding of the borders goes hand in hand with what you're doing with the election. Because besides that, we all watch Dinesh D'Souza's 2,000 Mules and find out some more facts. But I'm predicting on your show that just before the midterms, Biden is going to unilaterally make all those illegals have a right to vote, American citizens, just before the election. What they're trying to do is, because there's going to be 1 million more eyes on this next election than there were the first one. And they know that. So there's going to be a whole lot less actual cheating with the algorithms and ballot stuffings, because now they know people are watching at the ballot poll boxes with videos. They know people are watching. They're trying to get that number of illegal immigrants up, so they won't have to cheat as much. Oh, look, they just happen to vote all Democrat. So that's my prediction just before the midterms.
I think you're right. We already see it now in New York City, where they're legitimizing the vote for illegals. And in California, anyone can get a driver's license. And if you get a driver's license, you're automatically registered to vote. So this process you're describing is actually in play. But I see what you're saying. They're going to make it uniform to the country. And then you look at this. Biden is systematically, or his people are systematically moving many of the immigrants into red districts to try to take away that vote too.
Yeah.
And these are the 2 a.m. flights that we see that have been discovered, the illegal vote. I will tell you this, there's another school of thought that I'm wondering about, and we're speculating here, But let me tell you what I know for a fact. The campaign raising arm of the DNC, the Democratic National Committee, they have a group they call the DCCC, and it's a group that all Democratic politicians have to pay dues to. And if they're in a hotly contested race, funds can be rushed to that race to try to tip the balance. Here's what's interesting, Daniel. 55 of the top Democrats, including the entire squad up to AOC, have not been paying their dues.
Whoa.
And the day before I discovered this, and this is what caused me to look, Nancy Pelosi came out, and it's on tape. I saw this on Tucker Carlson's show. She said, if the Republicans win in the midterm election, we are not going to honor the results because they will be the party that destroys democracy.
Well, of course.
So I said, oh boy, she's saying something here. And so I'm starting to look, is there going to be an election? I started asking that question in my searches. And what I found was 55 top Democrats are not paying dues to what they should be paying dues to. I'm wondering if they know something we don't, that there may not even be an election.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure because they seem to be writing all the rules and they seem to be running things. But it goes back to what you said. It's all part of the satanic plan. These people are heartless. They appear to have no soul. They're just obeying their father.
Exactly. But I will tell you this: Brian Kemp, governor of Georgia, in bed with China. He knows who he's serving. The governor of Pennsylvania, he knows who he's serving. The Speaker of the House of Wisconsin that won't let their investigation of voter fraud that's provable in 5 counties, and the guy that's behind the investigation was a former Wisconsin Supreme Court justice. That man, who's Paul Ryan's best friend, he knows who he's serving. Many of these people know it's Satan. A lot of them don't. A lot of them, like I said, they just live on the breadcrumbs they're thrown to do what they're supposed to do. But I'm shocked that I can tell you right now, in my state, the governor of Arizona, he knows who he serves. The Secretary of State running for governor, she survived scandal after scandal. She knows who she's serving. And so what I'm saying, the penetration, Daniel, is beyond my wildest comprehension. When I started doing research on the election fraud, I never dreamed I was going to find this degree of penetration.
Yeah. Well, again, it's the same thing as Donald Trump. He never believed that level of penetration was in the government nor in our beloved health establishment. They could only possibly mean for our good, right? Well, I think that's been
But remember I told you I've got Hunter Biden and Devin Archer transporting biological shipments on behalf of Burisma to Wuhan back in 2015. That's one thing. But another researcher, and I can't take credit for this, she came out and she pinned Eco Alliance and Tony Fauci to the same group at the same time. And the proof is irrefutable. This has been a plot that's been in play for a very long time.
Absolutely. Yeah, this plan is just coming to fruition. But right now, I believe they're much more bolder about it because they've got rid of a lot of obstacles and deceptions. Now, they're not even like the World Economic Forum and those things. They're not even trying to hide it anymore, Dave. They want to depopulate the world and to create a new world system.
But here's one thing to hang hope on. Even though Latin America is almost all communist, okay, they are still all Catholic. Okay, Christ at their base. And I think there's a movement within these people. In fact, I know there's a movement within these people. Even like Argentina's Cristina Fernandez has been president, now she's vice president, and she yields big influence, and she's one of Putin's best friends. Even she's moving away from the World Economic Forum. And I see Latin America leading a resistance along with Russia. I think we're talking about what could end up being a World War III conflict. You've got the digital crowd, which is clearly satanic, the digital money, the digital ID. You got the gold-backed crowd that are saying we don't want to be part of this. And I see this division really forming. And this was actually suggested to me by a pastor who wanted to stay off the record. He said, Dave, have you looked at it this way? And it kind of circled in my head. And then I said, well, let me look into this. I go, oh my gosh. And I have a source inside the Mexican government that has verified what I'm telling you.
Well, let me give you a perfect example of what you're talking about. California being flooded with Hispanics voted 3 times against gay marriage. California. It was
That's
a
right.
judge that overturned them, and then of course they went around saying Californians are so free-minded and we love everybody. No, they don't. They did not vote for that. 3 times it was because the Hispanics wouldn't vote for it, so it backfired on them. So there is some hope because they have more a more spiritual feeling toward God than the rest of the padres here in this country.
Well, there's 2 factors about Hispanics in America today that are noteworthy. One, as I said, they're Catholic, and they're very family oriented as a result of their religious belief. But number 2, they're the fastest rising entrepreneurial group in America. So, what do entrepreneurs reject? Communism.
Mm-hmm, exactly.
And what do they reject as Catholics? The shall we say, the perversion of our children, the erosion of our Christian morals,
and abortion for the most part.
Hispanics are really leading the charge against this in our country.
Just look
you
at
notice
Florida.
the political shift. They've shifted 25 points in their allegiance to the Democratic Party.
Yeah, this could backfire. So I appreciate you bringing that up, Dave, because we like to put some hope out there.
Yes, wherever we can find it.
Or you can read the last thing in the Bible. God wins. So either way. But we might have to go through some rough times before we get to the final victory.
Yeah, but God commands us to fight the fight.
He does.
Even though I know Jesus is going to come down, okay, I think it's up to the people of God, to stand up for what's right. Yeah. And whatever happens, because I know where I'm going to end up, and I know you know where you're going to end up. Daniel, before we close, tell people how they could follow your good work. You've got a terrific show.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, just Google my name, Daniel Ott, The Edge Broadcast, or theedgeam.com, every Saturday night, live at 8 p.m.
8 p.m. Eastern.
Eastern time.
Well, Daniel, thanks for joining us. We're going to have you on more often because there were some major bombs dropped in today's interview. I got to tell you, I think we have stimulated a lot of thinking with our audience, and they're going to go out and do their own researches, which is why we do this.
Absolutely.
So thanks for joining us, Daniel. Always a pleasure to talk to you, and look forward to having you back.
All right. Thank you, Dave. We'll be
care.
looking forward to it.